Good day, everyone. This is another edition of NetKapihan. And today we have two distinguished resource persons who will talk to us or share with us their experiences being Kiwis in the response to the COVID-19 pandemic. We've also invited two special friends from the Philippines, Mony Romana, who is in the music business and taking up his doctorate in business administration, and then we have Terence Grana, who is a legislative reporter for a counterpart in the Philippines for the Beehive called Batasan or the Congress. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome you, and I'd like to, of course, the rose among the thorns. We will ask Tanya. Tanya, good day. How are you, Tanya?
I'm good, thank you.
Yes, Tanya will be our first resource speaker. Tanya is a Year 12 Dean at the Southern Cross campus. So, for the benefit of our viewers, when we say college in New Zealand, it means secondary school. Unlike in the Philippines, college is tertiary. Our second speaker is Chris Galo. Chris is the CEO of Step Up Now New Zealand, a mental health advocate organization. Hello, Chris.
Hi, hello, nice to meet everyone. We're talking about anxiety, and it was a bit of anxiety setting up the Zoom. I've got a virtual screen and everything, so I'm developing my tech skills for.
Yeah, that's part of the technology that we have to do with the new normal. I'd like to get some like greetings from our other resource persons from the Philippines. Let's start with Mony. Hi, Mony.
Hi everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me in this talk, and I really look forward. Apart from what Rene mentioned about me being in the music business, I also teach in the university, so I have a lot of interaction with students, and it would be very, I would be very curious as to how how students in your part of the world cope in comparison maybe to how our students do as well, and maybe learn from your experience, because we are also preparing for the incoming semester, and we'd like to be able to help our students adjust to what is expected from the new normal. So again, thank you very much for inviting me, and I'm looking forward to this very interesting discussion.
Mony, by the way, was my colleague when we were at Sony Music and Warner Music. And Mony is the real name, like Mony, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the next person is Terence. Terence is a legislative reporter for the Armed Forces Radio. Hi, Terence.
Hi, yeah. Good afternoon. Am I already
Yes.
in?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm Terence Grana. I am recently a reporter of the Armed Forces of the Philippines um, uh, radio, AFP radio, we call it, DWW, the 1134 kilohertz here, AM band. And uh, actually, I had been an employee of the House of Representatives since 1978 until 2000, 2 years ago, when I retired. Yeah, actually, I am a government employee. I mean, retiree. And for now, I am a full-time reporter covering Congress, the House of Representatives. And this because that has been my house then when I worked. So that's why I cover it as a reporter of the
Yeah.
AFP radio. Yeah.
So probably you'll be asking us some questions about how coverages is done, especially when Chris will be talking. So let's hear from Tanya, our first resource person, Tanya Dawson. And her topic will be centered around the takeaways for the media studies students. Okay, it's your turn, Tanya.
Okay, so I'll just start off with a little bit of context about what my students are like and what our school is like. But first of all, I'll just address my name on the screen. You guys can see that my name is Pauline Dawson. So in my professional job as a teacher and dean, I use Pauline Dawson as my name, whereas Tania Dawson is my stage name because I use it for other things. So I do have two names which are separate. So if you're a little bit confused with the names there, it's because I go under Pauline Dawson at my job. But basically what Southern Cross campus is, it's a campus from year 0 basically to year 13. So we have a primary school, a intermediate and a senior school college all into one school. The demographic of my students is in an area of New Zealand or in the area of Auckland, which has a very low income. So we are a decile 1 school. So what that means here in New Zealand is that our families don't have high incomes. They have a very low income compared. So you have the low income, the medium, and then the high income. So my students are in the low income bracket, and that has made it very difficult when it comes to resources for our families in terms of computers and internet. So that is kind of where we are in the world and kind of where my students are at. So during lockdown, when we first went into lockdown, a lot of our families did not have internet. They didn't even have a device. So our kids were suddenly from within 48 hours being told that school was going to close, and then having to go home, and then us teachers coming together and organising these online resources that we didn't expect to be organising at short notice. So these online resources, the only problem that we had at that time is that those resources couldn't be accessed by everyone in our community. So the MOE, which is the Ministry of Education, started rolling out some devices. So what they did is that they talked to our broadband providers, and they managed to make a deal with them to provide internet for those areas, and they also provided devices to families. So the devices had been delivered to families to help support them, and then those devices then belonged to the school that those students were part of. So that helped to address a lot of those issues which we were concerned about going into lockdown. So it made the accessibility to education easier for our kids, which I'm very grateful that our government was able to do in such a short amount of time. Now, this was a great opportunity for us to move forward from a traditional education to a more modern learning environment. Nowadays, our kids are using technology better than we do. So moving to that platform to where we're using technology and using social media as a way to educate has really, we were forced into it basically to go into it. Whereas in the past, when schools have discussed going into this sort of platform for education, a lot of older teachers or people used to the traditional methods didn't want it. So there was always community members or teachers that stopped us from moving into that, whereas this pandemic just forced us straight into this new way of learning. And it's been awesome because I've been wanting to do it for years, where I would produce all my lessons like as a module. I've always wanted to record my lessons and have the students be able to access the recordings at any time and be able to have the resources at any time. And we did find that through the lockdown, a lot of our kids were active at night. I'm not sure if that's similar to what it was like in the Philippines or not, but our kids would go on at 9 o'clock at night and be able to do their work online. Most times they were sleeping in 12 during lockdown. So the accessibility and the flexibility of them being able to learn at their own pace and when they wanted to was great. So that was one of the great takeaways from the experience of going into lockdown. And I have to praise our government for stepping in to help us with that. But it also means that our kids now have a correspondence sort of option if they weren't able to come to school. Now, a question I've got here about how the kids were when they were returning to school. So when our kids first came to school, there was a lot of anxiety, as you would know. So one of our principals, because we have 2 principals at our school, our college principal said that our focus when our students return would be about their well-being and also their safety. So when they did return, it wasn't about where's this work, you need this many credits, It was more like, where are you at? Did you manage to have any work done over the break? Oh, if you didn't, here's a plan for you for later on that we can sort that out. So it was more about well-being, and we've done that over the last 2 or 3 weeks. And we also did a couple of other things. So myself and a couple of my media students also started creating videos to share onto our school platform, which we have a Facebook page for our school. And the videos have been awesome. Like a lot of the community have responded really well. And what the videos addressed was to reduce the anxiety of the families about sending their kids back to school. And what we did in the videos is we showed what the school had put in place to protect their children. So I'm just going to quickly share with you guys one of the videos now. Am I able to share screen? Yes, I am. Am I not able to share screen?
Hold on, I will. Yeah, here I will.
You can enable.
Yep, I think I enabled it now.
Okay, let's have a go. Okay, so I'll just share this here. Okay, so this is my school's Facebook page, and I've just got a fake Facebook page that I communicate with my students through. So here's one of the videos that we did, and the whole purpose of this video was to put the families at ease about returning their kids to school. And it was also an opportunity for our kids to take leadership of what the messages were going out to the families. And these are some of our top leaders of our school, as well as some media studies students. I'll just give it a quick play, and I won't play the whole thing, but I'll just give you an idea of what it was like.
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah. So these are your students, Pauline.
Very cool.
Yeah, the things that the creative things of kids can do, eh?
A lot more engaging, eh? And seeing their own brown faces, that's what I like. I'm going to play it for mine before they come into class, I think.
Cool, so I'll come back, stop share. Okay, so that was one of the videos that some of our media studies students and leader students did to try and encourage families to feel safe sending their kids back to school. So it's interesting, as soon as that video was released, it got shared everywhere. It just kind of went a little bit viral, and the positive feedback from people that follow the page and are in the community helped really encourage our kids to make more. So we do have quite a lot of videos come out to try and encourage students to come back, and they've done things like how to greet each other without breaking social distancing and stuff like that. But I can't release that yet because it's a competition at the moment. So you might see it on our Facebook page later on. So that's one of the things that our kids have really gone with and created. And let's have a look at oh yeah, so one of the feedbacks when our kids got back is about, because I did ask them how they felt about being at home or working from home. So there was a couple of mixed messages for our senior students. It was more or less they needed to be at school to focus. I'm not sure why that might have been, but a lot of them said that they couldn't work at home and they couldn't focus at home. and it might be because there is a different bridge between technology with the older students than with the juniors, because the juniors did a lot better with distance learning. So they had Chromebooks and they were doing all the work online. And I think the reason why is because the younger students are the ones that have been born into this world of technology. So they've been able to have access to these computers and the internet from the minute they were basically born, and they've been able to work with it a little bit better than the older students. So I think that's the reason why there was a different amount of concentration with different groups. Just moving into my next question. So how will the lockdown pandemic contribute to students' understanding? So I think in the future, we haven't done it this year because we've needed to switch around our curriculum based on just getting them caught up. So next year we'll be introducing more of the COVID stuff into next year's work. So one of the things that I think this experience would have done for our students is allowed them to really understand the cause and effects and understand the concept of it, because they've gone through something that they can see the effects of. So the COVID-19 would be the cause, and then the effects would be that loss of jobs, the closing of schools. So they can now connect a very significant historical thing in their lives to those cause and effects. So that's something that we might use next year to help students really understand how to use cause and effect when they're doing their essay writing. The next part would be, well, what I'm doing with my juniors at the moment is that they're making PSAs. Do you guys know what a PSA is?
Yeah,
so public service announcement. So a lot of them are writing for COVID. So it's about keeping their families safe and stuff. Some others are actually writing about the Black Lives Matter protest that's happening at the moment, because that's quite a significant issue, especially in my community, in my school, because they're all Pacifica. So it relates to them and how they feel like they've been treated as an ethnicity in New Zealand. So a lot of kids are doing either Black Lives Matter or COVID as their PSAs, and that's come out of their own choice. Like, I've given them choices about you could do drink driving, you could do smoking kills, you could do all those other ones, but they've chosen these ones because these are the ones that are most significant to them at the moment. With my, like I said, with my senior students, just because we're trying to just catch them up, and they've actually got credits assigned to their assessments. We haven't changed anything too much of what we'd planned at the start of the year, apart from allow them time. And also our Ministry of Education has also released a kind of a deal with NCA, which is our certification, where they've allowed a smaller amount of credits to pass. And plus, I can talk about that all day, but I won't go into it in this. But so just because of that reason, we're just trying to get our senior students with those credits to pass. It'll be next year and the following year that will refer back to COVID. But that's basically how our students have reacted and the things that we've been doing in the school. But it'll be interesting on seeing how they look back on the event and how the future products or media products that come out, how they will be related to what's happened here.
It would be interesting also, Pauline, to see, because these are the juniors and they become seniors next year, so their engagement would be more like, that's good. Perhaps we'll have a revisit next year around this time, or later in the year next year, to find out how the juniors who are now seniors are doing.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
That's a good idea. Any questions from Mony or Terence or even Chris before we go to Chris, or you want the presentation first and then we have the questions?
No, I had a couple of questions, but my sister used to work at Southern Cross. So when you said Southern Cross, I thought she was really passionate working there. She only stopped working there because she's looking after our elderly mum. So
Nice.
she's going to be excited to hear that you're still kicking goals at Southern Cross, proud of those South Auckland schools.
For the context in the Philippines, in Manila especially, Southern Cross could be a school located somewhere probably in Tondo or in Malabon, Nabotas. That's where the low income bracket in the Philippines are. So, and it's a state school, right, Pauline? It's
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it is a state school. So it's a public school. In the Philippines, they call it a public school. Okay, so probably we can go to Chris, and then we'll have questions after the presentation of Chris.
Well, that was a really hard act to follow, but thank you, Tanya, for that insight. I'm really excited about education as a whole. So I've been in education for maybe 30 years nearly at Old Ted. Started off at Teachers College. My background is we came here when I was 2, so I landed in New Zealand in '66 and had the benefit of the schools. You know, we had the mum and dad bring us over for a better life. So I'm kind of the result of the sacrifices that mum and dad had done. And but we all went through the same kind of low socioeconomic ethnicity kind of stereotype. So, you know, mum and dad went through if Samoa is such a paradise, why did you come here? But apart from all that, I think I'm just saying that because it's such there's a lot of issues that I think our low socioeconomic and ethnic groups go through. Almost as a Samoan person, we seem to have had the biggest group. So I noticed in my career and in my life growing up, the Ratumans kind of stood back, the Niueans stood back. So all the people in front were mainly Samoans, Tongans, and, you know, the bigger island groups. And I think similarly to history in New Zealand, we kind of get lumped in together. So, you know, even my ignorance was I'd look at an Asian person and think they're Chinese. Everybody's Chinese to a lot of us, but I've got a point. I'm getting to a point. So my perspective for these questions is from a Samoan 55-year-old that's grown up in New Zealand and have all these things that makes me the total sum of who I am today. So the perspective is as an education person, health. And so to answer the questions, the first one was, what were my thoughts during the lockdown, especially with the Prime Minister's performance. And I think for me, she's always kind of struck me as a warm person who cares. Okay, she's got a lot of support from a lot of world leaders and how she's handled herself in speech. So I was impressed. You know, I don't kind of have an affiliation anymore. I grew up in a Labour house, but I kind of don't trust any politicians. But so far, she's been the warm sort of light at the end of the tunnel for New Zealand in my eyes. I know a lot of business sector wasn't very happy because she was sort of prioritising all these things like social development, you know, the low socioeconomic areas. The benefit, so with the handout or the benefit that New Zealand has for unemployed, she targeted them as well to boost up their payments, taking into consideration all these feedback from mental health agencies and Tamariki Oranga, which is the protective sort of service for kids. Domestic violence went through the roof. I think the mental health access to Lifeline and such doubled since April. And there were a lot of experts talking about the surge of mental health issues. In my experience in mental health too, a lot of the academics that have become unwell were studying. So there was a lot of that sort of induced stress and mental instability that they've experienced. So I'm personally happy that they've focused on the mental well-being of people. And I think that's what we're sort of concerned about now with our students coming back. So with the students we've got, they're supported learning students, so they have learning difficulties. And so we've got to doubly think about how they're coping at home. With regards to your comment about the government's reaction to prepping up access for low socioeconomic or low decile schools, I was impressed with that. We were directly affected too. So we're I'm doing a contract at the moment for a private provider, and there was difficulty to we had to quickly prep as well for the online access and engagement. But there were little things that should have happened as well. Like as soon as I asked for the Chromebooks, there was that question, it's the South Auckland stereotype, are we going to get those back, or are they going to sell those, So it kind of really, it made me feel sad, that, if that was, my clients, then I would give them, because we're getting funded for each of those people. So, I think there was that kind of process and systematic breakdown of things that could happen, that cause and effect, and people didn't sort of regard some little pockets of our stakeholders. But apart from that, with regards to the Prime Minister's effectiveness, I think she was, personally and professionally in my interest as an educator and a health, advocate, I think she did all right. What was the other things I was talking about? Interestingly, I had a forum with a mental health advocacy group, and one of them made a comment. Some people think we're worse off, but it's just the same every day for them. They're isolated. She just felt like there wasn't that much of a change when the COVID lockdown happened, because in her experience, and I found that interesting, because a lot of our families or our communities that we're trying to help, they would probably say the same, or we still don't have money to go out anyway, so it was interesting to see that some of us are being affected by this pandemic, and yet a lot of them, that's their whole life. They've been feeling that sort of isolation and marginalization since time began. So I do believe that a lot of the future for education has to consider the mental well-being of our students. And even in my 30-year career of teaching, I still come across providers that have the policies for inclusive practice, diversity. The Treaty of Waitangi is that sort of, document for not just Māori and the bicultural, but also us as visitors to New Zealand, we play a part. So my point is that I want to sort of be a service for the organisations that aren't actually honouring those policies. It's a bit of lip service to have a karakia or prayer or Māori anthem in that. But I really believe that we have to incorporate the indigenous models of health and education. We have to consider those things in our usually a Eurocentric framework, which is academic, which is, or the family's not involved, it's very individual. That old school that you're talking about, that's a bit, why do we have to learn about those computer things? And some of them think it's evil. But so those old traditional kind of things have to change. And for us to put people in those positions to say, oh no, this is our policy. We take the model of Māori's wharetapa whā, the meeting house, with all the elements that you have to consider for the well-being, as much as you would fuse that kind of philosophy and importance into the organisational well-being, So I'm really hoping that people start thinking at a higher level with regards to this cause and effect, not just, tick the boxes, NZQA. I know about that nightmare. And so, that's another thing too, that I'm glad about New Zealand sort of relaxing some of the count of the credit so they can actually pass. With us, it's that attestation, so they're not concentrating on writing, and I'll say to them, I'm not here to mark your spelling. I just want you can even ask, I'll ask the question, you answer it verbally, and I'll write it down, and that's a pass, So the Eurocentric way is that you can't accept that, and they'll question who qualifies to blah, blah, blah. But so I'm hoping that us we as education providers, what's the word we use, Renee? We're facilitators of self-discovery. So yes. Those sorts of, that kind of language is what we should be using to automatically accept that learner as part of the plan. They've got to take ownership of their learning, and that mutual respect. I think Māori call it whakawhanaungatanga, which is fellowship in the beginning. Well, where are you from? You know, oh, wow, that's interesting. Instead of the pre and post assessments where you're just ticking your reading and writing and all that sort of stuff, it's taking an interest in the whole person. So yeah, that's for so many years, that's what I've been trying to crusade to push, but it's still the same in some areas. So I hope to God that we think about the learner and the stakeholders as a whole. The philosophy that we have is love over fear. So there's two emotions, I believe, is love and fear, not hate. So when there's fear, you're obviously, you know, afraid of failing, or you don't want to look a fool. And so I'm pushing that as well. You know, back in the day, that's all the huggy, feely stuff, and they don't really want to hear it. They just want, you know, commodity, get them over, thumbs on seats, tick it off, get our funding. But I think if we approach it as facilitators of self-discovery with a love philosophy, then, you know, I think that's going to be more effective. They are going to be genuinely engaged. They you know, the people know, they can feel it. Okay, so I'm kind of rambling on. So the support agencies I've seen, there's a lot of them in New Zealand.
That's important for us to know.
I can do a screen drop too, but I think I'll send the links to everybody. Some of us will already know, but there's you know, there's LIVA, there's Health Foundation, Mental Health Foundation. There's a whole lot of stuff there, and people can access it. But you know, there's Pacifica again. So there's a Samoa, you know, Pacifica language access. There's some buttons that you can push on the website for the kids that are gaming a lot, and it's a fun interactive website. So yeah, there's a lot of help around. But I think there's still a few gaps where we need to be the agencies that, not necessarily mental health, but we might be in a school, but we should have all those contacts, you know, to pass on. Yeah, I think a lot of schools kind of have it as a business model, so we don't want to send our, you know, potential students, but love over fear means that, oh, okay, we can't provide what the student needs. You need to go to, you know, our competition, basically. But, you know, that's an indigenous way of approaching it. So, yeah.
Chris, I just would like to find out from you, because during the lockdown, I personally know that you were all by yourself, you know. So yes. I was worried about your well-being, your mental health. Yes. Every time you watch the Prime Minister or Dr. Ashley Bloomfield at 1 p.m., the 1 p.m. Press conference of the Prime Minister sort of was like a melting point for everyone to stop what they were doing and concentrate maybe for the next couple of minutes. Yeah. How were you taking it as a Kiwi, and you were all by yourself, but you were listening these messages coming from the Prime Minister or the other cabinet officials?
Yeah, so, you know, as a person living on my own, I'm a bit crazy like that. I like my own company, so I was okay. I had the tech to sort of, you know, to talk with family and support groups. But I guess for me, it's that spiritual, you know, I can't say religion because I don't think I'm religious, but I'm very spiritual. So I grew up in a Methodist church. But even those are tapu, they're sacred kind of things to bring up. So I try and change my language. We're not talking about God or religion. We're talking about your spirituality, you know. So I try and sort of put in words like that people can relate to in their way. You know what I mean? But how did I feel? You know, I was fine. Whereas a couple of my other friends who are overseas, they weren't coping very well at all, you know. But I think it's part of my journey in my career. I had coping skills, you know, and I never sort of got to a stage where I thought, you know, I was a bit anxious. All in all, I think I was just concerned about the way people behave in situations like this. Like Tanya said, we were kind of forced into having to deal with certain things or facing up to certain things that we probably didn't, you know, really think about. What I loved too was hearing that Queen Street, our main street, the air quality had risen, you know, and it just sort of backed up that kind of frustration of how much we're really damaging humans damage everywhere. But I think those are the little things that our students built up inside their minds. Some of them don't want to come to school because they're still a bit scared. Some of the parents, I can see them behind the Zoom screen going, "You're not going back to school," And then, of course, we've got the parents who, "Oh, thank goodness, we're going to drop them off." They're driving me nuts. So, and so some of them that are coming back to school, they're really anxious to see their friends and to hug. So we're all planning that 1 meter air high fives and everything. But again, it's making the most of the situation. Like, I really feel excited for your students, Tony, how you're talking about. It's like that inferential and critical thinking, eh? It's like taking that thing and not just describing, "Oh, that's orange and that's black." It's, "Oh, how do you think that's going to impact on mum and dad?" Or, there's a lot of social development. We don't need all these experts who have researched empirical, data and everything. You can see it right there. I think that's what I want us as educators to be more aware, to see more, instead of piling on all this academic stuff. So one more point is that a lot of our students that come to us they've got like 200 credits of unit standards. I think one of them, 40-year-old girl, and I said, "Where did you learn how to embalm? That's a certificate in embalming." And she said, "I don't know." So there's that.
Embalming, certificate in embalming.
And embalming, and she said, "I don't know where I got it from. I don't even know what it means." So there are some cowboys that have just been ticking, tick, 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 ticky, and is that love approach? No, because it's not going to benefit anyone. You're just ticking it off to get there. And then you've got some places where they're recycling, or have a go at apprenticeship carpentry, and that falls over. "Oh, I think you should be business admin," So that's the kind of stuff I'm trying to stamp out. And the only way I'm going to do it is to have Indigenous people at the forefront of this organisation to make those those decisions. So I do harp on about it, but I know there's a lot of work to do. And we need more forums just to share our ideas.
Now, time for questions from from anyone that you'd like to ask a question. Could be about wellness, well-being, about media studies, students.
Can I ask Mony and Terence, do you guys have government organizations for that kind of stuff? Mental health support and, excuse my ignorance.
Well, there was recently mental health law was just enacted recently, and I think they're working on. I'm not quite sure where they are right now in the implementing guidelines, but it's really also something that has high in terms of discussion in communities has been heightened. And I think what's happening right now, it's really just putting the issue again back up front with stressors for kids, not just with their losing interactions, losing connections, but also the relationships at home. So
and is there traditionally when I'm referring to my culture, for the older ones, it was never talked about. It was kind of like if I can use a really vulgar sort of an old phrase, it's like if there was a mental health issue or a disability, I would think the worst possible scenario, you throw the body off the cliff because it's going to bring bad luck to the crops. If I can use that as a very, sort of basic thought. So there has been a lot of in our culture too, the shying away. "Oh no, he's fine, he's all right," or it's almost like they don't want to talk about mental health. It's a sign of a weakness, And I think that's what's sort of evolving. But I think we should be part of it, not the Eurocentric sort of perspective. I appreciate that, but I think we as Indigenous people should really embrace it and start looking at our coping strategies. Because when I think of somebody who I know kids have been Down syndrome or they've had a physical disability or mental, they're still part of the family, they've got the white dress for White Sunday, and everyone's fussing over them, or they're helping out. You know, they're setting jobs. So I want to go back there, where the love of the villagers kind of protects those kids as well. And part of it is sort of talking about evaluating my self-awareness. I always say to everyone, I think everybody has a mental illness. I think some people can cope with it a lot better, whether it's, you know, or it's praying or whatever. I think those discussions should be part of the education, you know, facilitating self-discovery, because then they know themselves and they know how to cope. They can compare it. Oh, yeah, I've got a bit of that too, you know. But yeah, that's the change that I'd like to see.
Probably from Terrence's point of view, because we always have, our government has an update every day at 1 p.m. So everyone is tuned in, whether on radio, on the internet, or on television, to listen to the Prime Minister, to whoever is the government official. Now, in the Philippines, Terence, is there like a concerted effort, like one voice to talk? Because we only have one platform. How about in the Philippines?
Yes, our legislature passed a law sometime in March. I think it was in March 23. The Bayanihan Healers One Act. So that that's really for the people. You know, every facet of the law refers to all the people in the country. So that's one, you know. And then our leader, the president himself, gives updates on the health situation and everything every evening.
Every evening. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it's in the evening.
Every evening.
All right.
It's in the evening. Yeah, it's like what Chris mentioned also, that at 1 o'clock, I think.
Yeah, one in the evening, one in the morning.
One in the
Every Monday. He's supposed to do that every Monday. He's supposed to do a report every week.
Once a week.
To Congress.
Okay.
To Congress.
Not to
the people.
Not to entire Philippines, like what our Prime Minister does. Okay.
They do. They do daily briefings, but at the level of the interagency task force.
Yes,
okay.
that's right. That's right.
So the president does maybe usually his address every week, but the interagency task force does something similar to what you're doing. Every day they provide an update. What's the situation? How many cases are recorded? What are what's the situation on the ground, basically?
Yes,
I just wanted to ask Mony, would it be beneficial to send some like links to resources that you could use in class, or you know, like some links?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
I think because there's a lot of Māori and Pacifica resources that I think a lot of other students would relate to. My brother does a lot of youth work in Australia, and he found that it was an the kids that were at high risk suicidal because of the academic pressures, and it was targeted for low socioeconomic areas. But he found out that from the affluent communities, they were going, hey, our kids are killing themselves too, It's kind of like he's created these resources that relabels of, it's not Maori, it's not Samoan, this is your tribe, and you're going to paint your tattoos and all that sort of stuff. So it's that kind of inclusive approach that I think your students might enjoy, and you can sort of scale it up and down to see.
Well, yeah, definitely that would help. And again, I'm really the discussion so far has been very interesting for me, because it mirrors a lot of what our situation is in the Philippines. Starting off from Tanya's discussion, like I teach in a university. I teach in 3 institutions. Two of them are uni, universities, that I guess you can say that the student population would be fairly affluent, and one university that is a little less. But across the board, if you talk about anxiety, if you talk about what they're feeling, it's pretty much the same. You know, they're anxious about school. They're anxious about the work that they have to do. I mean, for a while there was a clamor from students to actually forego the semester until next year. So and that's across the board. I mean, it's not just, you know, your low income brackets. It's also from the unis that I teach in, because of, you know, difficulties of the adjustment. I mean, the infrastructure is has much to be desired. I mean, if you guys are, you know, if down there connectivity is an issue, that's like 3, 4, 5 times more here. It's not just connectivity when it comes to the students, it's also the teachers. They don't have as much access to good internet. Okay, so yeah. But just to comment also on what Tanya's approach in involving students in putting out the messaging and putting out, you know, I think that's very good. I mean, it's not it's something that we could adopt. We haven't actually thought of that. I teach in institutions that also do videos, music, etc. For the most part, we've left figuring out how to prepare them among ourselves, among the academe and among the administration, where I think I mean, I found it very good to have the kids involved in laying out the preparations for other students. So if I may ask, maybe Pauline, Tanya, how did your students react to, you know, okay, let's be we'll have you involved in doing this PSAs or these videos that you just showed. How did they react to that?
Yeah, so because we were talking to the students, because it came from the top, it came from our senior management team. They saw a video that I had made with my colleagues. We made a TikTok video.
Yeah, I saw that TikTok.
You've seen the TikTok? So we made a TikTok video of a demonstration of how you would greet each other at school when you came back. And the purpose of that video was so that the kids would make their own TikToks. And quite a couple of kids have made some TikToks and submitted them. So after I released that video, there was huge success, and that's because I think I used some popular music that the kids listened to, and it was dramatic. And I used a platform that the kids have on their phones. Like, they might not have a computer or a laptop at home, but most of them have a phone of some sort with data on it. So we knew that they would be able to see that. So once we had some really good success with that, when I approached my students with the idea of making a video, they were very I had two students who were very eager, and then there was one student that they kind of coursed into it because they were their friend. And when we went off to start videoing it, I just said to them, these are the 5 things we need to cover. So we need to show you coming to school and being greeted, and we need to show that the hand sanitizer. So these are the things we need to show. You guys need to spice it up. So a lot of the things that you guys saw in the video, they were their suggestions. All I did for them is just give them what they needed to show and take them to the locations. And I was like, okay, how would you like to show this? And they came up with the ideas. And the reason why this is so powerful is because it gives students agency, and having them involved in their community and their school as a community, because we forget that you have like the larger community and then you have your school community. So for them to be in charge of what the messages are going out, that gives them that student agency where they have the power to make change or have the power to send a message. So that's the reason why we decided to hand over a lot of the messaging to the kids.
That's cool. That's cool. And I also asked my student Mony to come up with a TikTok on hand washing. So we watched that Vietnamese video, and then they did their own like the hand washing. So Tanya is correct. Using what the kids are familiar with already. So there are so many apps that they can use. There's an app called Mind Lips or something, where you can say something and it will mimic your voice or something like that. So yeah, using the technology. Sometimes as a teacher, especially old school teacher like me, my students are like far ahead of us.
I've been using an app that I stumbled across on the phone. It's an avatar that you can build close to what you look like. So I've used that a couple of times, and they're, wow, look at that, and I'll joke around and say, I have to put this on so you don't look at my face first thing in the morning, and you've got to kind of just show you some vulnerability as well, and then be careful that they don't walk all over you. But I think they really do trust you because you're admitting, I don't know everything, but I told you, let's go and look it up, let's Google it or look in the dictionary. And I think they're more sort of trusting if you've got those vulnerabilities, it's still credible.
I think one time I saw Mony with his students. I think it was a music. They made a music video. There was they originally composed the songs, and I think that is something that in New Zealand that could also be. I don't know, Pauline, if it's part of the curriculum of media studies, like music. I mean, music video, yes.
Yeah, music videos.
But the one in Mony's class was really composing the songs and then performing.
Because we in the uni, like I guess as Rene mentioned, I teach music business. So I primarily teach in schools where they have either a music production program or a conservatory of music, or in the other university, a music business program. So I mean, that's part of what they do. It's what they do every day, create music. And what I like about what an opportunity that presents itself to us right now in that field is that the ability to collaborate is expanded. I mean, just us doing this Zoom meeting across the other ends of the world. I mean, that's something I'd like to explore when it comes to my students as well. How can we interact with, and again, because I'm pretty much intrigued by the similarities of our situation, and maybe there's a lot that our students can learn from your students' experience, and maybe what we can share as well to your students.
Collaborate with Pauline. Create the music video.
Maybe. Why not? Why not?
Yeah. Any other question to either Chris or Pauline? Before we wrap up our discussion, it's just we just barely scratched the surface. There will, as I was listening to you, I was thinking of tangent ideas coming in, and anyone with a question before we get some final messages from everyone?
A little, just a little statement now. I don't know if it's a statement. How I wish we could also musicalize our news reporting, so that
I mean, why not? Yeah.
It's just it only pops up. Anyway,
that's something. Because in the past, well, I remember newscasters. They used to be seated on a table. They're reading the news. Now you see the newscasters standing up, right?
Yes.
And I was challenging my students. That was like 12 years ago. I was challenging my students. Why don't you create a newscast lying down? You're lying down and creating a newscast. We don't know if it's going to happen.
Reclining,
reclining or something like that.
For business section.
Our students, whether in the Philippines, whether in New Zealand, They are very creative. If you, they just need the guidance or like the creative brief, like what Pauline was saying. So these are the things, and then they will expand it. And Chris is saying, Chris and I, we teach in a school with supported learning. We have autistic, ADHD, Down syndrome, but the creativity, wow, you just tell them, you know, if it's autistic, they will always do that. Always like it's a routine. So yeah, the rhythm for music and everything. Yeah.
And even I think too the joy of teaching these people, you know, I mean, sometimes I miss the academic ones who turn up with a pen and, you know, have all the right questions, and some of these guys will just ask you a question from left field and you just got to go with it, you know.
Yes.
But I think it's a really nice platform to be vulnerable. So I was jumping up and down at our Thursday night Zoom party, you know, disco. Michael Jackson was on, and a few of them were kind of itching to get up. You know, they were sitting there. As soon as I jumped up and made a fool of myself, nearly all of them were standing up, jumping around, singing so flat. Henning, the guy from out west, he was just nearly shattering the speaker. So I had to kind of quickly mute whoever. You know, so those are the technological sort of things that I'm trying to create and master the bridge of the Star Trek Enterprise. Because one didn't have Zoom. They were on my Chromebook with Messenger, and then I had the phone over here with Skype, and then the Zoom in the middle. So, you know, it just made me think, well, I'm going to make sure that they've all got Skype or Zoom or whatever, so we can all be on the same screen.
Our school is also in South Auckland, so yeah, it's almost the same as Pauline's school. So anyone would like to make some final comments and messages before we go?
Just thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, no, it's a great discussion.
And I think my objective is for you guys to link. I mean, you know, Mony with Pauline and Chris, and you know, I will, if it's all right, I will share each one's email so that you can just email them.
Yeah, no, that would be
Yeah,
great.
that will be great. Right.
So thank you very much to Chris, our honorary Filipino, my brother
From another mother.
He's trying to learn some Filipino words.
Yeah, that's seriously hard. My little Rotha, he was laughing at me, and Ira, the other Samoan boy, he'd say, "Can you say?" And then he'll say a Filipino phrase, and then he'll look at us both and go, "The dialect was too hard for him."
He has a Filipino student with him. I have one too. So thank you very much, Mony, for time with us, and Terence. And Mony,
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Pauline. Our Pauline is half Filipino. Mom is Filipina.
Yep.
Dad is Kiwi.
I tell Renee whenever we've got some nice looking guests, I'm going to tell everybody they're Samoan.
Well, Chris' sister, I met her, and she was based in Alaska, and she had a lot of Filipino friends in Alaska.
Yeah.
Oh.
So there's a big network that we can, you know, get some resources together, have some dialogue.
And a lot of similarities between the Philippines and the Pacific Islands with
Yes,
in terms
yes.
of culture, in terms of words. You know, my
Love
room
of
is one.
food.
Or even the television shows. A lot of my students actually watch Filipino dramas, and it's
Where can
because
we access those?
the narratives are just very similar.
Very
So
similar.
yeah, there's a huge similarity between the cultures.
Yeah, so thank you very much, guys, for spending a little bit
you.
of time on this Friday.
Mhm.
I hope this is not the last time that we get together and get some discussions, and offline
Anytime.
also keep on engaging with one another. So thank you very much.
Okay.
Just stay there because I just take a photo and end the program. Okay, I will start. I will stop the recording. Yan po ang ating, that's our NetKapihan for today.